So it's the end of Gay Pride Month, and I thought I'd have a couple reflections from this. This is from Governor Pritzker. He happens to be the governor of where I live in Illinois. The Chicago Pride Parade is back! As we all come to terms with the ramifications of the fall of Roe, like the fall of the Berlin Wall, wah, wah, I am so happy to see this joyous celebration. In Illinois, we protect, caps lock, all people. Everyone has a home here. Unless you're a baby. Babies will kill. What he means is all adult humans. I guess that's what it means. So I'm looking on Twitter, the gay pride and so forth, hope I'm celebrating and on and on and on and on. And there's different people flying the flags. There's people all over the place. I mean, one is a man dressed as a woman princess, and then she's giving a doll to a person. Now we have a guy who's got his shirt off and half naked. And this month of celebration of gay pride, to me, is a fantastic example of the distinction of worldviews. It really is a fantastic example. So let me say the perfunctory but true thing I say all the time, because this is true, this is what Christians do, they're supposed to do, which is Christians are supposed to love all people no matter what. This is a no-brainer. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, Mark 12:31. He also said to love your enemies, both in Matthew and in Luke 6. We're supposed to love people regardless. And love means to care for their good. It doesn't matter if they're your friend or foe. We're supposed to care for their good. That people acted lovingly. That Christians are not to go around beating people up. We don't kidnap people for slavery. So I can do tons of examples. This is the basic understanding. Well, I say that basic understanding because sometimes Christians seem to forget that. Well, how am I supposed to treat them? Well, then you treat everybody lovingly. This is not open for grabs. It's not a... Non-Christians also don't understand that because they think that if I disagree with your view, it means I'm like you are, which means then I'm going to be mean to you and hateful and try to hurt you and harm you. But the Christian worldview, that's false. And this example of Gay Pride Month is a good example of distinction of worldview. So let me say that first example we all love. Okay, so here's a couple things. One is, in the Christian worldview, we are not ever, 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 ever to be pride-driven. There's a Greek term that Paul uses to the Corinthians, and I think in Philippians as well. He says, I boast in you. In that sense, you might say I'm proud. But there he's boasting that someone else, a group of people, the church, is having faith in Jesus Christ. So it's Paul's way of saying, man, I am so glad that you are a living testimony to what God's grace can do. I'm so excited about that. What Paul never does, and of course Jesus never ever does, brag about how proud he is of himself or his own accomplishments. Matter of fact, Jesus in the Gospels, particularly say Mark's Gospel, Matthew and Luke soften it a little bit, but Mark is straight up about this. In Mark's Gospel particularly, Jesus deliberately deflects praise all the time. Even Jesus does. So for example, when Mark 10, when the rich man comes up and says, he says, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And he says, why do you call me good? In Mark's Gospel, Jesus does not want to be praised. So, I mean, he's the perfect example of what the word we use is humility. So Christians have no business being proud about anything ever. Ever. I mean, ever. Can we be happy that we accomplished something for the kingdom of God? Well, sure. Being happy about it, being pleased with that, that's wonderful. Being pleased is not being proud. So what I don't do as a Christian ever is seek to make sure that someone else recognizes my accomplishment and my success or my state of being. I don't, as a Christian, I would never feel the moral duty to make sure people around me know how pleased I am with myself. That's a very bizarre, in the Christian worldview, that's pride, and pride is a sin. C.S. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, his view, that pride is the worst possible sin. But for pride, he thinks the worst because a proud person cannot know God. And Lewis defines pride as thinking I'm better than. Pride is thinking I'm better than someone else, and I mostly agree with that. That is a form of pride, but I would also will have added to him, and also, and biblically speaking, there's a different kind of pride. Not just pride that says I'm better than you, that is pride as well, but the pride that says I'm independent. I don't need you at all. And so I'm pleased with my own self, my own accomplishments. To use a psychological term, they're narcissists. They become so engulfed in themselves, so enraged, There's a degree, in fact, there's disorders of self-love. So Christians have no business in the Christian worldview, based on the teaching and example of Jesus of Nazareth, to ever be proud of anything. The second thing is when it comes to social acceptance, where a non-Christian might think it's completely ridiculous and judgmental and horrible to tell me I can't do something. In the Christian worldview, I don't need you, nor do I want you to accept all my behavior. I want you, in a Christian worldview, as a Christian, I want you and I need you to help me be more like Jesus. And you need my help to help you. And so I would never demand that you accept all my behavior. I want you to accept my behavior that's like Jesus, and then lovingly, gently, safely correct anything that's going on in my life that's not like Jesus. In the Christian worldview, we make a distinction between a person's inclinations and their behavior. If you're not a Christian, well, it depends on the religion. Like Muslims make the same distinction, Jews make the same distinction. Most religions do make the same distinction, most do. But naturalists might not. Naturalists, the people who are non-religious, non-whatever, they might say, no, 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 no. At core, I am an evolved chimp and I need to act out on my impulses. And not to allow me to act on my impulses is hateful of you, because you're not here to tell me what I can and can't do with my impulses. And that's a typical, in my experience, the typical view of the average person who's a non-Christian today in America, particularly, and that is to say, you can't tell me what I can and can't do whenever I want to do it, because who are you? You can't judge me. That's the number one sin of the modern movement. And Jesus believed very much that you can love a person, but not love what they do. Those are very different things. Jesus so loved the world that he came to the world to tell them, this is how you live, I love how you're supposed to live, I love you, I'm gonna die on the cross because you've sinned so much. I've not come to die on the cross because you're a good person. I've come to die on the cross because you're not a good person. But why would he die on the cross for a not good person? Because he loves us. Now, Paul says it perfectly, of course, as usual. He says that this is how we know he loves for us, that at the right time, Jesus died for the ungodly, right? Romans 5. And he died, you might die for a good person, but you ain't gonna die for a bad person. This shows his love for us, that while we were yet sinners. It shows his love for us, that while we were yet sinners, he died for us. So in the Christian worldview, we'd have a major, major distinction between loving a person versus loving what they do. So in the Christian worldview, when it comes to my sexual inclinations, which is almost certainly solely an issue of my genetics and my this worldly inclination. So for example, in the Christian worldview, Jesus says in the world to come, we won't be married or given in marriage because we don't have babies. We won't have sex and procreate there. We won't have sexual desire in the world to come. We only have that right now. That helps us procreate our species and so forth. So that's part of our animalistic urges. And Jesus would assume, yeah, that's right. That's how you're designed. You have animalistic urges. The question is, what do you do with the urges? So in the Christian worldview, I'm a heterosexual male, and so I find women attractive. And Jesus says, he would say to me, David, high five, spectacular. I'm glad you're heterosexual. I say, great, so I'm gonna go have sex with everything that moves, right? Every single female I wanna have sex with, I can, right? He's gonna say, no, you can't do that. I thought you loved me, Jesus. I do love you, so I'm telling you can't do that. Why not? Why? You're just all about rules, 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 tell me what to do. Jesus said, no, it's not about rules. I design you how to live. I'm telling you, I want you to be able to experience life the way I designed it, and that's best when you do it my way. And if you marry a woman and then you have sex and then have the children inside of a marriage relationship, that's the way I want it to be. Unless you choose not to get married. All right, this is just back to Matthew as well. Unless you choose not to get married. If you choose not to get married, fine, you can be celibate. That's fine. Paul himself tells the Corinthians, if you get divorced, if a woman or man, but in Corinth, the problem is women. Women become Christians. There's some Corinthian Christians and their husbands are not. They refuse to convert. But let's say the husband leaves them. Paul says, you're free to remarry. But if I were you, I wouldn't do it. I'd stay single like I am. See, the Christian worldview, singleness is not a crime. Singleness doesn't make you sub or inferior at all. It's just one of the options because it's about sexuality. So what about if I have attraction to the same sex, the same gender, whatever the new word is these days? If that's the case, then what do we do? Well, in the Christian review, we say is, well, then you absolutely cannot act out on it. Just like as a heterosexual, I cannot act out on my impulses outside of marriage. That person can act on their impulses ever because now I can get married. So for the Christian worldview, I understand from a non-Christian point of view, it makes them very, very angry, very ticked off. You tell me what I can't do with my own body, my choice, and you get this. So what I'm saying is that's a huge distinction of worldviews. So if I'm just an evolved chimp, I understand from your point of view, the Christian worldview, what you're saying sounds so It sounds stupid. It sounds, who are you to tell me what I can't do with my genitalia? It just sounds so stupid. I agree, from your point of view, that would make sense to me. But from the Christian worldview, it's not so stupid. In the Christian worldview, it's exactly how God designed it. And so we fundamentally disagree on that. So when it comes to Gay Pride Month, there's nothing wrong, as it were. There's nothing immoral with a sexual desire. There's nothing wrong inherently with a person who might have a genetic disposition to find the same sex attractive. I think there's other disorders going on, but that's okay. There's nothing, they haven't committed a sin. Not in the Bible, they're not committed a sin. It's when they act upon it. Just like when a heterosexual person does anything sexual with a person with whom they're not married, they've sinned. I can still love them and still think the behavior is wrong, for which they need forgiveness. So why would I celebrate being straight? Why would I have a whole parade celebrating my heterosexuality? Well, no one would. I'm not proud of that. I just am. It's like being proud of how tall I am. Well, it's not an accomplishment. Why would I want to? Oh, I would only want to do it if I want to make sure you like that I'm tall, that you approve that I'm a heterosexual. And that's we'll go back to that again, which is the parade is just to make sure everybody else tells me I'm good. And the Christian worldview say, no, that's not what, in the Christian, that's not what we do. I don't demand you tell me I'm good. I want God to say that. And he's already said, no, you're not. I need to die for you on the cross. And so it's, again, just a very different understanding of the worldview. So is it, in the Christian worldview, is it sinful to be a homosexual? No. Is it sinful to act out sexuality in any way where it's not in a heterosexual marriage? Yeah, that's a sin. And the Christians make a big distinction between those two things. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. See you next time.